So basically, what I was thinking of was, oh fuck, I can't believe you've done this.
Hey, we're recording the podcast. Shut up.
Good morning to you, wherever you are, because it is Morning Somewhere for October 2nd, 2024. My name is Bernie Burns, now with a new advanced voice mode. It's Ashley Burns. How you doing over the Ash?
Good morning, Bernie.
We'll get to that in a second. Yeah,
Maybe we might be talking about that a little bit more tomorrow.
We have some big news in the world today. We have a kind of an unofficial official policy here at the Morning Somewhere podcast where we try to only cover one shitty story a day. Like one bummer, downer, bad news, world sucks story. The problem is we have that rule because there's so many shitty stories, so we're going to have to talk about two of them today.
Right. Well, if we didn't have that rule, it's very easy for the whole thing to become doom and gloom because there's a lot of very serious, unhappy news in the world.
Like we're leaving stuff out today that we probably push to tomorrow.
Well, yes, almost everything, if you think about it. Almost everything.
Basically, the front page of your... you know what I did today? I thought I'm going to go look at some news stories today, and then I had a pause. I'm like, I don't know where to look for news because I was going to look at the VP debate from last night and see what people thought because it was like 3 a.m. here when it happened for J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. And I had a pause. I'm like, where can I get good news now? Like accurate news. And I had to pause because I'm like, I was just at a loss, Ashley.
Well, I've got my go-tos. I like AP News. I like Reuters. But I find myself when I go to a lot of news websites reading through a lot of things and sort of glancing through and scrolling through because I do care about the real world things that are happening. And there's a lot of very serious things going on. But if I focus entirely on those, I'm gonna curl up and I'm not gonna be able to function. So I also have to go find the fat bears, which we'll talk about later.
Here's our conundrum. We don't have Morning Somewhere. We are Morning Somewhere. We have to go out and comb through all the horse shit. But in very, very serious news, so what's been going on this week is Hurricane Helene struck the east coast of the U.S.
And I feel like this has happened very quickly and kind of quietly. There's a lot of photos going around. There's a lot of photos and videos of the flooding.
There's some horrible videos,
and casualty numbers. But I feel like it doesn't have nearly the focus that something like Katrina had. I feel like in the U.S., when Katrina happened, everyone was focused and talking about Katrina. This, I feel like, is happening, but it's not got everyone's attention.
Yeah, this one didn't seem like it was on the radar a lot, no pun intended, that people weren't really talking about it before suddenly you were seeing buildings that were flooded up to their top floor in water. 300 miles from the coast. These are major inland areas that are affected by this hurricane.
Well, and this is an area in North Carolina in which you have a deep family connection as well.
It is. So my dad lived in Western North Carolina. He lived a town you see a lot in the news these days is Asheville, North Carolina. Beautiful, beautiful town, beautiful part of the world. My dad lived, up until his death, he lived outside of Asheville in a small town called Brevard, North Carolina. Oddly enough, it was on my list of places when I moved away from Austin of places I wanted to consider to live. But you and I quickly settled on moving outside of the country, Ashley, so we didn't look at it. And it was really, very important to us, very important to the kids, JD and Teddy growing up. We would go visit there on a regular basis. It's the only way that we could see fall colors was to go there. It's absolutely beautiful. And I'll never forget, it's located in Transylvania County. Which is such a great name. So anyway, if you're affected by this thing, there's a lot of people without power. I know Brevard is without power, without cell phone signals as a result of that probably. And if you're affected by that, hope things get better for you soon. For everyone else who's wondering what they can do, we'll put some links in the link dump for ways that you can contribute to the recovery efforts for some of these areas that are affected by Hurricane Helene.
Yes, and we have a number of listeners as well who are in the Asheville area. So please keep in touch, and we'll have links where you can donate if you're able, and we'll be making a donation as well.
And oddly enough, we didn't feel like we wanted to talk about that. We said we're going to talk about this tomorrow no matter what, because it's already going to be Wednesday. And then no matter what showed up in the middle of the day yesterday when Iran attacked Israel with now what is estimated to be 180 ballistic missiles. So
That's a lot of ballistic missiles. And here's something that is confusing me. That's a lot of missiles. I'm not hearing about any casualties yet.
no, so this is up to date information, for what everyone knows or what's been reported as of when we're recording this. Like we say with these developing situations, you'll probably have more accurate information in your time. Hopefully you have a reliable news source that you can go to. But this is from the BBC, what we know currently about Iran's missile attack on Israel. There's about 180 missiles, 110 ballistic missiles, and 30 cruise missiles fired towards Israel, among others. One thing I found interesting, like you said, was that so far, Israel is not reporting any serious injuries. Israeli officials have not reported any serious injuries as a result of Tuesday's air attacks, but Israeli medics said 2 people had been slightly wounded by shrapnel. Of course, that could be maximum delay, minimum disclosure kind of a thing.
It could be. There's also, I've been, reading a bit more about Israel's sort of defense systems, because we are aware of the Iron Dome, the existence of the Iron Dome. That's
Hear about it a lot.
Yeah, that's something you're like, oh, that'll shoot down any missile, et cetera. But you were telling me earlier that it doesn't necessarily address ballistic missiles specifically, which is, I guess, what Iran was using. But they have a number of different layers to their defense system. So there's the Iron Dome. Then there's something called David's Sling.
That's very biblical. Yeah.
And there's also the Arrow system, which is designed specifically to intercept ballistic missiles. So it sounds like there's a lot of layers to this particular dome. It's a shiny dome.
And I know the technology exists with ICBMs and things like that, but it's so weird to read about it. The Arrow system, the top level that you were talking about, that specifically targets missiles that go outside of the Earth's atmosphere, which is just, I don't know why. That just strikes me as such a strange thing.
It does,
Yeah.
right? Like they shouldn't be able to go that high?
No.
That seems like it's cheating?
An Iron Dome that we hear about on a regular basis, that's because that's the level of protection they have for missiles, like short-range missiles that are typically fired by Hamas and Hezbollah. Who Hezbollah has been who they've been attacking lately with the pager attacks, with the missile strikes, and then going in with ground forces, which is, I thought this was a reaction to, Israel rolling in and attacking on the ground, that Iran was stepping in, but it's more so from the death of the Hezbollah leaders that they've been targeting over the last few weeks.
But the to make a sort of long saga, an ongoing saga, brief, this is a very volatile situation that could deteriorate in the coming days. So something to keep an eye on if you, like me, find yourself often scanning over a lot of world events, because if you focus too much, it's just, it's too much.
But one last little piece of relevant information here, especially for people living in the West. The BBC, this is reported by the BBC, understands that UK fighter jets were involved in supporting Israel on Tuesday, as they were in the April attacks. This is slightly bigger than the April attack that happened. You might remember that one, Ashley. We were talking about the drones were on their way, remember, to Israel, and we just had to, it was like an 8-hour time period. We're going to have to wait until they arrive.
And just wait and see what happens, yes.
And in a, war is war, but the way that this showed up in the Western world was suddenly in the middle of the day, there was this warning that an attack on Israel was imminent, and then you could see, it's an interesting way to look at it. Go and look at like the stock market from yesterday. You can see this incredible cliff where everything started to drop immediately.
Right. The warnings hit, everyone panic sells.
Right. And then and interestingly enough, in that also, people who are what are called Bitcoin maximalists, who talk about Bitcoin as this thing that's going to save us all when there's no money in anything that's left.
Right. When all the other currency crashes, Bitcoin will be there.
Right. It dropped just like everything else. It was sold immediately in a global conflict, just like every other tech stock, that's out there.
I mean, that seems like a trend for Bitcoin, though, is that it as much as it's billed itself as not being tied to any sort of regular currency, it does follow the trends of the overall market quite a bit.
And a macro trend there is that during the long decade of quantitative easing from the 2008 crash, suddenly Bitcoin was this thing that rose up and became this huge investment for everybody. It's interesting. It's just one of those things you got to point out that when a global event happens that affects all these other investments, Bitcoin goes down just like everything else. It doesn't become like, let's all flee to Bitcoin.
Right. It's not, what did they say, inflation proof or deflation proof.
That being said, the dollar did surge. The dollar was on a slow decline recently, and the dollar did surge during the middle of the day. But then you could also see after the big dip, everything, you could see everything start to climb up as the attack kind of turned out like the April attacks, where there was some, property damage and things like that on a big scale, but there weren't any injuries reported. And Israel has yet to retaliate, although they have warned Iran they are about to.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Not necessarily to us, but to the, in general, to the news, because it's a situation that could deteriorate very quickly in the coming days.
And we'll link that article. You can actually see too, we'll talk about it here because it's more of an infographic. You can see the different armaments in their arsenal, and you can see the different ranges of the different missiles they have that can reach as far as like Eastern Europe. Not quite all the way to Italy, but they have a nice chart of that in this BBC article. We'll link that in the link down.
Yeah, and it is pretty fascinating to read about. Elsewhere in the techosphere, especially as related to the military.
Speaking of the military, yeah.
Yeah, if I may. Just last week, we talked about...
You said week like a Scottish person.
It's a
like
week.
Loch. Week.
Ah, yes, it's a very fine week.
They said it like dreek, which is a word which means just...
Sort of
Scotland has like
weather.
80 words for shitty weather, basically. Dreek is one of them.
Well, last week we talked about the HoloLens and its journey to the military. Fascinatingly, now Microsoft has just officially, I guess they listened to the podcast and were like, oh, right, we should do something about that. They've officially discontinued the HoloLens headsets.
Or they just saw, like we did, the conversation came up for us because we had seen the Meta Connect presentation and the future of AR and what they were doing, and they had it down to the size of essentially like really thick Harry Carey style Ray-Ban glasses, but passable, definitely passable. And that's what got us talking about it. And now HoloLens has been pulled from consumer markets, or is at least announced that it's on its way out.
Yes, Microsoft has officially ended production of the HoloLens 2 headset with no signs of a replacement ahead. They are going to support software for the original HoloLens headset up till December 10th. And then, you know what I learned about this, which I thought was absolutely fascinating, is, do you remember the Oculus Rift founder, Palmer Luckey?
Yes, it was an early controversy at Rooster Teeth when he was booked as a guest for RTX.
Interesting.
There were people who took exception to that.
Well, we now know what he's up to since he left Oculus. He has a company called Anduril Industries that does military technology now. So that's where he's gone and is now working with Microsoft to improve their IVAS mixed reality headsets that the Army uses. Fascinating development to me.
And we did say, that we were joking, saying you had to be a member of the military to get HoloLens these days. And people pointed out in the Reddit comments, somebody even said, like, hey, they use game controllers on submarines. We still have game controllers. That was a good point that was made by Spiral Dancer 8675. But less than a week later, guess what, buddy? You're wrong. we don't have our HoloLens anymore. But and I thought it was really interesting in the Microsoft announcement. This is a little paragraph in it. It says, we will continue to invest in mixed reality opportunities with first-party software solutions and services, partnering with the broader mobile phone and mixed reality hardware ecosystem. In addition, we remain fully committed to the IVAS program with the U.S. Department of Defense. So while this appears to be going out of the consumer market, it is not going to change their commitment to the U.S. military at all.
Well, thank you for your service.
So it is a military product now.
If you, like me, have no idea what IVAS means, it's Integrated Visual Augmentation System.
Why wouldn't everybody know that? Does it bother you as much online as it does me when people just throw an acronym into something, assuming that everyone's going to know it, like a medical condition, like I have IVBQ, and it's like, no, nobody knows what that is.
Right, like I've got PCOS. What?
Yeah. And you got to go look it up, But everyone, when it's their life, they always want to use the acronym.
No, that doesn't bother me too much because I do have Google at my fingertips. However, can I just throw a little pet peeve at you? It's when people use, there's a lot of things like ETA. What does that mean?
Estimated time of arrival.
Right. Unless you run into like the occasional like online forum or, subreddit or something, or someone uses ETA. Edited to add. No. That's already been taken. No. They're like domain names. You can't just use the acronym again and have us figure it out from context. I remember FTW was that way, where people would say, also the one that bothers me because context really changed it. What is FTW besides for the win? Fuck the world. There used to be people who would abbreviate when the internet was more cynical. It was fuck the world.
And so you didn't know if it was for the win or fuck the world. Those are two different meanings entirely. Also, it can really change the context of someone's message to you when they write SMH, which means shaking my head apparently now.
I didn't know what that meant for a long time, so I just made up an acronym in my head, which became a headcanon. So now I'm guilty of the sin that I'm
what is it?
Going after other people for is so much hate.
No, so much hate was the original meaning of it.
Was it?
Yeah, and it makes it sound like so much hate means like you're really angry about this, whereas shaking my head is just like the modern like shame.
Okay,
shame.
I gaslit myself into thinking I made that up.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
SMH, Ashley. I'm gonna double check that out. You got me thinking about it.
I'm gaslighting the world.
While we're talking about revolutionary tech and things going on in the tech world, ChatGPT announced advanced voice mode where they got a bunch of new voices in. I think much to the chagrin of ChatGPT fans, they removed I think it was Sky was the name of the voice.
The Scarlett Johansson.
Sounded like Scarlett Johansson, yeah. And they had to remove it after, did she actually have a lawsuit or send them like a cease and desist?
I know there was at least cease and desist. There was at least threatened legal action.
There was lawyers.
I don't know if they went further than that after ChatGPT removed the voice.
So they got some, and I was kind of playing around with it. It was much faster than I remembered. I haven't used it in a long time.
It was much closer to the demo that they showed when they announced ChatGPT 4.0, which is that sort of conversational where it can take the audio or it can look at images or whatever. And they showed that demo with now departed CTO of OpenAI. And the demo was like that, where it was very low latency, very quick, very conversational. And you did that this morning in the bathroom. I was like, who is he talking to? Turns out you're talking to your phone.
I was getting ready for the day. You're painting a horrible picture of me using the toilet and talking to my chat friend. But but then we ran into another thing too, where for some reason our internet here went out. We would love to be able to demonstrate this for you, but it's been driving me ballistic today. It was like a thread, actually, in a sweater that got pulled. Tech devices today are like goddamn addicts. They all need internet. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Everything wants to check the goddamn internet.
They can't function without a hit.
Probably, if I'm being honest, it's probably because they're all collecting data on us. And that's the whole purpose of the app from the company's point of view, is we need our data dump on this person for the day. But every time I got to do anything, every single app has to connect to the goddamn internet. And if there's no internet, especially if you're trying to use the app to troubleshoot your local network and work on the internet problem, it's like, you don't have internet. I know, that's why I'm trying to use you. It's crazy. Even like on these, like Spotify, when we're out here in the country and I have Spotify and I have an offline library of music that I've downloaded because I know we're going camping and we're going to be somewhere with no cell signal. Spotify and every song is like, I'm going to check the internet. I just say, the Rolling Stones album from 1968, it might have a new album cover. Just today. They might have put one out. I got to check the internet before. It's like, just use the offline version. And then it goes like 90 seconds. And it's like, you don't have internet. It's like, I know. That's why I have it all downloaded. Anyway, such a pain in the ass.
All right, let's end on a high note. You ready to talk about fat bears?
I'm so ready to talk about fat bears.
Online voting for Alaska's Fat Bear Week contest has opened. So there are...
I'm looking at these guys. I like number 32, Chunk.
So this is an annual contest. It celebrates the resiliency of brown bears that live in the Alaskan Peninsula, where you can vote for your favorite fat bear. So the bracket this year, it features 12 bears. So 8 are currently facing off against each other in the first round. 4 have received byes to the second round. So the bears have been preparing all summer for this bracket by eating as many salmon as they can. According to this article on AP News, this is, by the way, got all these mini stories about bears that are facing off, and it's the most fascinating face-off you can imagine. But a little bit of information: adult male brown bears typically weigh between 600 and 900 pounds in the midsummer, and by the time they're ready to hibernate, which is why the voting is now, they can weigh well over 1,000 pounds. They will eat up like 30 salmon a day. One of the bears in this bracket, Bear 856, is an older male, one of the most recognizable bears on the river because he's an absolute chonker. He ate 42 salmon.
What?
in a single day.
This is something for the rest of us, buddy. So they're all chunking up for the winter.
Exactly. So this is like their immediate pre-hibernation, like super chunk weight. The winner will perhaps face the largest bear on the river, 32 chunk, a 20-year-old male who once devoured 42 salmon. This is the prize guy. He's estimated to weigh over 1,200 pounds.
I like Chunk because he's got like that pear shape for a bear. It's like he looks kind of svelte on top, like at the shoulders or the forelegs, and then he's got this big old belly. I like Chunk.
Yeah, he's got that pear shape going on.
And his name is Chunk, but I'm going to call him Chunk. That's how I pronounce it.
So we'll put a link in the link dump to where you can vote on Fat Bear Week and follow your favorite fat bear.
I don't like this buy system they've put in place. I don't like that. This shows preference to certain fat bears.
Well, ultimately, fat bear, the fattest bear will come out on top, right? Regardless of the buy. You know, if fat bears get through the first bracket, if they're still the fattest in the second bracket, they're going to come out on top.
Yeah, and be sure to click the link in the link dump. Don't poison your search results by searching for fat bear. You might be surprised at what you get. You might want to slide some of those safe searches over to the left before you engage in that.
Before you actually go looking for your fat bear.
All right, who are our regular size bears for today, Ashley?
All right, I would like to thank our regular size bears, Lucas Melick and Doug. Thank you both for sponsoring this episode of our show and all the fat bears of Alaska at patreon.com/morning somewhere.
Thank you to Lucas and Doug and Chunk, number 32, not to show any preference, though. All right, well, that does it for us today, October 2nd, 2024. We will be back to talk to you tomorrow. We hope you will be here as well.
Bye, everybody.